Welcome back to the deep dive. We are really glad you're here with us today.
We are.
Because we're doing something completely different.
A bit of an experiment for us and for you.
It is. Usually the whole mandate of this show is velocity. We grab a whole stack of articles, we skim the cream off the top, and we give you the quick hits.
The goal being you can go about your day feeling a little bit smarter, a little more informed.
Exactly.
Okay.
But the feedback we've been getting, and if we're being honest, the way we've been feeling ourselves, is that sometimes velocity is the enemy of understanding.
That is absolutely right. We live in a culture of the scroll, don't we?
We do.
We scan headlines, we read maybe the first paragraph, and we think, okay, I know the story.
Got it. Moving on.
But real history, the kind that actually shifts your perspective on the world, it just doesn't happen in the summary. It happens in the details. It happens when you stop moving and actually stare at something. You just look at it until it reveals itself.
So today, we are hitting the brakes hard. We are initiating what we're calling a marathon session.
Wow.
We're going to spend this entire deep dive focusing on a single, very specific historical moment.
How skimming?
We are not going to skim. We are going to drill down. We're going to analyze. We're going to debate. And we're going to unpack every single syllable of the source material we have in front of us.
And the source material today is it's perfect for this kind of archaeological approach.
It really is.
We're looking at excerpts from a document titled The Hollowed Halls, Truman's Great Reconstruction.
And just to show you how specific, how granular we are getting, we aren't even looking at the whole document.
Yeah.
We are focusing exclusively on the section labeled Idea 1.
Idea 1. It sounds so incredibly dry, doesn't it?
It does.
Like it's an agenda item for a zoning board meeting or something.
By item 3B, Idea 1.
But when you actually read the content of Idea 1, it describes a scene of such violence and such cognitive dissonance that it feels more like science fiction than American history.
The section is titled The Great Gutting, 1948 Reconstruction. And that title alone. The Great Gutting? I feel like we could spend half an hour just sitting with that.
Oh, we will.
But before we even start to deconstruct the words, I want to set the stage for you, the listener.
Yeah, let's paint the picture.
I want you to close your eyes for a second. Unless you are driving, please do not close your eyes if you are driving. And just picture the White House.
It's probably the most ubiquitous image in American life.
Exactly. You see it on the news every single night. You see it on the back of the $20 bill. It represents permanence. It represents, the unshakable foundation of the Republic. It looks like it was carved out of a single block of white stone in 1792 and hasn't flinched since.
Well, that's the architectural intent, right? The building is designed to project continuity. It says presidents come and go, policies change, but the institution remains solid.
But the mission of this deep dive, the entire reason we are slowing down to look at this text, is to completely dismantle that perception.
Just shatter it.
We are going to take that mental image of the solid, eternal White House, and we are going to smash it. We're traveling back to 1948 to witness what the source text calls the visual shock.
And shock is absolutely the operative word. We're going to explore the key words provided in the document, specifically looking at the engineering, the machinery, and the sheer scale of destruction involved.
We're going to find out what happens when you turn the most famous house in the world into a construction site.
Yeah.
So let's begin. Our marathon analysis. Section 1. Deconstructing the title, The Great Gutting.
Let's pull that apart. Literally, word by word.
Let's do it. First word, the great.
Okay. The Great. It creates an immediate sense of scale, doesn't it?
It does. It elevates it.
We use great for events that define generations. The Great Depression, the Great War, what we now call World War I, the Great Awakening.
Right. When you attach great to a noun, you are saying this is not a local event. This is not a minor incident.
No, you're saying this is a total event. It implies magnitude. It implies that nothing was left untouched.
It implies that this was the definitive gutting. And then you hit that next word, which is just, it's so visceral. Gutting.
Gutting. It is a violent word.
Yeah.
It's a biological word.
But it's exactly what I was thinking. It feels anatomical. It doesn't feel architectural at all.
No, it doesn't. And think about the context in which we usually use that word. You gut a fish, you gut a deer.
Right.
It's the act of slicing open the belly of an organism and scraping out the vital organs. You're removing the heart, the lungs, the stomach, everything that makes the thing alive.
And what do you left with?
You're leaving only the skin, the shell, the husk.
It is such a harsh, brutal contrast to the way we usually talk about architecture, especially historic architecture.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if you're fixing up your kitchen, you say you're renovating.
You're renovating, sure.
If you're fixing up a historic landmark, you say you are restoring.
And restoration is a gentle word. It implies care. It implies that you're taking something old and precious and you're polishing it. You are bringing it back to its former glory.
It implies a respect for the original materials.
Yes. And renovation implies making it new again. But gutting implies evisceration. It's an execution.
It implies emptiness, a profound emptiness.
It forces us to confront this idea that the building is being, well, killed in a sense, or at least placed into a state of suspended animation where the body is gone and only the shell remains.
So the source material is being very deliberate in using this word.
Extremely. It wants us to understand from the first two words that this was not a surface level fix. They didn't just strip the wallpaper and put in some new plumbing.
They removed the insides of the beast.
They did.
And then we have the date, tacked on in parentheses, 1948.
And context is everything. We absolutely cannot understand the great gutting without understanding 1948.
So let's paint that picture for a minute. World War II has been over for just 3 years.
Right. So the dust has literally and figuratively settled on the war, but the world has fundamentally changed. The United States has emerged as the singular industrial and economic superpower of the globe. There's no one else close.
And Europe is in ruins.
Utter ruins, and is being rebuilt, literally reconstructed via the Marshall Plan, which is happening at this exact same moment.
That is such an interesting parallel. I hadn't even thought of that. We are rebuilding Europe, and at the very same time, we're rebuilding our own executive mansion.
It speaks to the mindset of the era, I think. This was the age of big industry. This was the age of American can-do engineering.
Right.
We had just built the atomic bomb. We had just built thousands of Liberty ships in record time. There was a sense in 1948 that there was no problem, physical or geopolitical, that couldn't be solved with enough steel, enough concrete, and enough manpower.
And the man sitting in the Oval Office, or I guess the man who was supposed to be sitting there before he had to move out, was Harry S. Truman.
Yes.
And the text explicitly calls this Truman's Great Reconstruction. That possessive is important.
That possessive Truman's is really heavy, isn't it? It anchors the event to his legacy. This is his project.
It's interesting because we usually associate Truman with, the end of the war, dropping the bomb, the beginning of the Cold War. We think of the Truman Doctrine.
Foreign policy, primarily.
We don't usually think of him as a general contractor.
But in a way, it fits his personality perfectly. Think about who Harry Truman was. He wasn't a wealthy aristocrat like FDR. He was a farmer. He was a haberdasher from Missouri.
He was a very practical man.
Very practical. He was the buck stops here guy.
Right.
And the great gutting is a very practical, very blunt solution to a very serious problem. You can almost imagine a more sentimental leader saying, "Oh, we can't possibly tear out these floors. Thomas Jefferson walked here. We have to preserve every splinter."
But Truman, or at least the engineers he empowered, they looked at the building and said,
"It's broken. Fix it."
"Tear it out. Build it right."
It reflects a very utilitarian approach to history. The function of the building as a safe place for the president to live and work, that was more important than the sentimental value of the original failing materials.
And that brings us to the final word in that title block. Reconstruction.
Now, this is where we get into a bit of a semantic battle, but it's a really important one.
Okay.
The text uses reconstruction here in the title, but as we'll see later in the keywords, the word renovation also appears.
And I think for most people, those words are basically interchangeable. Is there really a difference? Or are we just splitting hairs here?
Oh, no. In the world of architecture and engineering, the difference is massive. It is the difference between cosmetic surgery and a total organ transplant.
Okay, unpack that for us.
Renovation usually implies working within the existing structure. You keep the frame, you keep the bones of the building, but you update the systems. You put in new wiring, new drywall, maybe you move a non-load-bearing wall, but the house is still fundamentally the same house.
And reconstruction.
Reconstruction implies that the original structure is gone. It has either collapsed or been demolished, and you are building a new structure in its place. You might be mimicking the old one, trying to make a replica, or you might build something completely different.
So by using the word reconstruction, the text is suggesting that the White House of 1948 was not fixed.
It's suggesting it was replaced.
Wow.
It implies a really strange duality. The exterior, the stone shell that everyone recognizes, was preserved. But the interior, the house itself, the floors, the rooms, the halls, was reconstructed.
So it suggests that the White House we have today is actually a replica of the original.
Built inside the skin of the original.
That is a completely mind-bending concept. It brings up that old philosophical puzzle, the ship of Theseus.
Exactly. It's the perfect analogy. If you replace every single plank of wood in a ship over time, is it still the same ship?
And if you replace every floorboard, every beam, every internal wall of the White House with steel and concrete, is it still the White House?
Or is it a 1948 office building wearing an 18th century costume?
That is the question at the heart of this deep dive. And to even begin to answer it, we have to look at the reality of what happened. We have to move to section 2, the core image. The text describes a hollowed out shell.
This is where that phrase from the mission statement, the visual shock, really comes into play.
The visual shock of a hollowed out White House. I want to stay on this image for a while. I want to really try to see it in my mind's eye.
To visualize hollowed out, you first have to understand what was there to begin with. The White House wasn't built like a modern skyscraper with a steel frame.
No.
It was built like a traditional house, just scaled way up. It had these thick, load-bearing masonry walls on the outside sandstone from Aquia Creek in Virginia. And inside, it was basically a timber frame. Huge wooden beams, wooden joists, wood lath, and plaster walls.
So structurally, it was a forest inside a stone box.
That's a perfect way to put it. And by 1948, that forest was rotting. It had been burned by the British in 1814. It had been cut into gas lines, then electricity, then plumbing, then ventilation systems. The beams were sagging. The whole thing was structurally compromised, dangerously so.
So when the text says hollowed out, it means they didn't just patch those beams.
No.
They removed them, all of them.
Every last one. Imagine this. You're standing on Pennsylvania Avenue in, say, the fall of 1948. You look at the north portico, the columns are there, the windows are there, the roofline looks mostly normal.
It looks like the symbol of American power. It looks like the White House.
But if you were to walk through that front door, you wouldn't step onto a marble floor in the grand foyer.
What would you step into?
An abyss. You'd step into an abyss. A canyon, a vast open volume of air stretching from the basement dirt all the way up to the sky.
That's where the title of the document comes from. The hollowed halls.
Mm.
I love that phrase, the hollowed halls. It's poetic, but it's a paradox.
It's a complete contradiction in terms. What is a hall? A hall is a defined space. It has a floor you walk on. It has walls that guide you. It has a ceiling that shelters you.
If you hollow it out.
A hall ceases to exist.
So the phrase the hollowed halls describes the absence of the very thing it names.
It's a ghost description. It's talking about the negative space where history used to happen.
And just think about what that means for the history of the building. The room where Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation.
Not.
The room where FDR planned the New Deal.
Scooped out, gone. The physical space is there. The coordinates in the universe are the same. But the actual matter, the wood, the plaster, the floorboards that absorb the sound of their voices, that was all scooped out and carted away.
It creates this incredibly surreal image. It makes the White House feel like a movie set, a facade, like a Potemkin village on a national scale.
That is the visual shock. It's that jarring realization. We rely on the White House to be a monolith. We think of it as solid rock all the way through. To learn that for a period in 1948, it was just a fragile, empty shell, that makes you feel a little unsteady.
Yes.
It creates a sense of architectural vertigo.
Vertigo is exactly the right word, because if the inside is gone, the question that immediately pops into my head is, what is holding the outside up?
That is the engineering nightmare we are about to get to. But first, we have to deal with the thing that is occupying that empty space. The thing that proves the gutting happened. We have to talk about Section 3. The Bulldozer Anomaly.
This is the part of the text that I literally could not believe. I had to read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting it.
It's the detail that breaks the brain. It's the glitch in the matrix.
The text focuses on the visual shock of a hollowed-out White House with bulldozers inside.
Bulldozers.
Plural.
Inside.
Let's just pause and let that sit in the air for a second. We are not talking about a guy with a sledgehammer. We are not talking about a couple of workers with wheelbarrows.
No.
We are talking about heavy industrial earth-moving machinery inside the White House.
It completely disrupts our mental categorization of the world.
It does, because we have these buckets in our heads, right? Bucket A is the White House. And in that bucket, we have velvet ropes, chandeliers, oil paintings of old men, hushed voices, diplomacy, state dinners.
And in bucket B, we have construction site. In that bucket, we have diesel fumes, mud, yellow steel, loud noises, sweat, danger.
And the text takes bucket B and doves it directly into bucket A.
It forces 2 incompatible ideas into the same space, and your mind just rejects it at first. A bulldozer inside the White House feels profane.
It feels like a violation.
It does. You don't bring a tractor into a cathedral. It's just wrong.
But in 1948, they did. And I want to get into the logistics of this because I am genuinely baffled. How do you get a bulldozer inside the White House?
It's a fascinating logistical puzzle. A bulldozer, let's assume it was something like a Caterpillar D7, which was common after the war for military surplus, is a massive machine. It's wide, it's tall, and it weighs tons and tons.
You cannot just drive it through the front door. The door frame isn't nearly big enough.
No. So they almost certainly had to disassemble the machines to get them in piece by piece, probably with a crane over the top.
And then reassemble them inside.
Reassemble them inside the hollowed out shell. Or, and this connects to the hollowed out image, they might have driven them in through a breach in the foundation if they were digging out the basement, which we know they did.
But let's think about the physics of it. The text says bulldozers inside, plural. What are they driving on?
That is the smoking gun.
Okay.
You cannot drive a multi-ton bulldozer on a wooden floor. Specifically, you cannot drive a bulldozer on a rotting 150-year-old wooden floor. It would crash through to the basement in 2 seconds.
The presence of the bulldozer confirms the getting.
It is the absolute irrefutable proof. For a bulldozer to be operating inside the shell of the White House, the interior floors must be gone. The bulldozer must be driving on the earth.
On the dirt.
On the dirt. The interior of the White House was a dirt pit.
A dirt pit surrounded by the most famous, most iconic walls in the entire world.
Can you imagine the sensory experience of that? Imagine being a worker there in 1948.
The smell would be the first thing.
Yes. Instead of the smell of old paper and furniture polish and whatever they were serving for dinner, you have the smell of diesel exhaust, the smell of pulverized plaster dust hanging in the air, the smell of damp earth exposed to the sun for the first time in a century and a half.
And the sound, my God, the sound.
The acoustics would be deafening. You're inside a stone box. So the sound of that diesel engine roaring, the clanking of the steel tracks, the scraping of the blade against debris, it would just echo and amplify and reverberate off those stone walls.
It creates such a violent contrast. The great gutting. It really was an act of industrial violence.
It absolutely was. And that is why the text emphasizes it so much. It wasn't a delicate restoration. It was an excavation. They were treating the interior of the president's house like a strip mine.
It really reinforces that Idea 1 heading, that this was an industrial operation from the start.
And it reflects the American confidence of 1948. We had just won a global war with industrial production. We believed in machines. We believed that the solution to any problem, even a historical preservation problem, was a bigger machine.
The foundation is failing. Bring in the bulldozers. It's such a distinctively American solution.
It's not subtle,
No.
but it's effective.
Now, the text doesn't just describe this scene. It tells us how to find proof of it, which I find fascinating. This brings us to section 4, decoding the search keywords.
This is a really interesting meta layer of the source material, isn't it? It's not just telling us a story, it's giving us a treasure map. It's saying, if you don't believe me, go look for yourself.
Let's look at these keywords. There are 3 of them, and each one adds a specific flavor to the story. Keyword 1 is White House, 1948 Reconstruction photos.
Okay.
Why specify photos? Why is that important?
Because the text understands the power of the visual. We can talk about hollowed halls and bulldozers inside all day, but for many people, it's an abstract concept. The human brain struggles to subtract the interior from a building we know so well.
You can't picture it.
You can't. You need the photo to ground it in reality. You need to see it to believe it.
And it also implies that these photos exist, which is interesting in itself.
It is. It means they documented the destruction. They didn't hide it. They had photographers standing there, probably wearing fedoras, snapping pictures of the wreckage. They wanted a record of the gutting.
It suggests transparency, or maybe even pride, like, look at this incredible engineering feat we are achieving.
Well, perhaps just engineering necessity, for documentation. But for us today, those photos are the source of the visual shock. They're the evidence.
Then we have keyword 2, White House gutted bulldozers.
And there is that pairing again. Gutted. Bulldozers. The source material is completely obsessed with this juxtaposition. It repeats in the title, it repeats it in the description, and now it repeats it in the keywords. Repetition signals importance. The text is telling us, this is the hook. This is the core image. This is the thing you are going to remember.
Right.
You might forget the exact date, you might forget the specific engineering details, but you will not forget the image of a bulldozer inside the White House.
It's the meme of 1948. If they had Instagram back then, that would be the viral post.
Absolutely. Hashtag great gutting. It's unforgettable.
And then we get to keyword 3.
Yeah.
This one shifts the tone a little bit. It's more technical. Truman White House renovation engineering.
This brings us to the how. And this is the part that frankly terrifies me from a structural standpoint.
Engineering. We haven't spent enough time on this word yet. What does engineering imply in this context?
It implies a massive, almost impossible structural challenge. Think about the physics of what we just described. You have the exterior walls, the shell. They are made of sandstone. They are heavy. They are tall. 2 main stories, plus the attic and the basement levels.
And walls, generally speaking, like to be held up by things. They don't just stand there on their own.
Exactly right. In a normal building, the floors and the interior walls act as a skeleton. They provide lateral stability. They tie the exterior walls together and stop them from bowing in or falling out.
So if you gut the building, if you remove all the floors and all the interior walls.
So you're removing the skeleton, you're leaving the skin standing up all by itself.
That sounds incredibly unstable.
It is a house of cards made of heavy stone. It's a recipe for catastrophic collapse. If you remove the insides without a very careful plan, the walls just fall down.
So the renovation engineering keyword implies what? What was the plan?
It implies that this was a high-wire act of civil engineering. They had to figure out a way to hold those walls up while they were tearing the insides out with heavy machinery.
How do you even do that? What's the technology?
Steel shoring, a massive, complex web of it. They would have had to build a temporary steel skeleton inside the shell, bracing the walls from the inside, before they could even think about bringing in a bulldozer.
It's like performing open heart surgery while the patient is running a marathon.
That's a great analogy. Or it's like replacing the chassis of a car while it's driving down the highway. It is incredibly risky, every single step.
And remember, bulldozers inside.
Right. So you have this fragile 150-year-old stone shell held up by temporary steel braces, and then you introduce heavy machinery that causes vibration.
And vibration is the #1 enemy of old masonry.
The absolute enemy. The bulldozer just shaking the ground could have cracked the sandstone. It could have destabilized the foundations. The engineers on that project must have been sweating bullets every single day.
Truman's Great Reconstruction. Can you imagine if it had gone wrong?
Imagine the headline, White House collapses, President homeless. It would have been a national humiliation on a global scale, right at the start of the Cold War.
A symbol of American decay, not power.
Exactly. The symbol of American power crumbling into a pile of dust because of a construction accident. The pressure must have been immense.
So the very fact that the building stands today is a testament to that engineering.
It is. It is a triumph of 1948 technology and planning. They pulled it off. They gutted the building. They dug out a new, deeper basement, which is why they need the bulldozers. And then they built a brand new, modern steel frame inside the old walls.
So wait a minute, if they built a steel frame, that means the White House today isn't a timber-framed house anymore. It's not a forest in a box.
Correct. Structurally, the modern White House is a steel skyscraper. It is a steel grid with poured concrete floors encased in the original 18th century stone walls.
It's a cyborg.
That is a great way to put it. It is organic on the outside, bionic on the inside.
This brings us perfectly to section 5.
Yeah.
Synthesis. We need to put all these pieces together. We've analyzed the words gutting, reconstruction, hollowed, bulldozers, and engineering. Now, let's talk about the meaning of the hollowed halls. What does it all add up to?
We need to synthesize this into a coherent worldview. What does this event, this great gutting, actually tell us about history and about symbols?
We keep coming back to that title of the document, the hollowed halls.
It really does serve as the defining metaphor for the entire project.
When you combine the bulldozers and the gutting, the end result is that state of being hollowed.
And the result of being hollowed is a loss of history, at least in a physical, material sense. The actual floorboards where history happened are gone. They were scooped up by a bulldozer and dumped in a landfill somewhere.
But the reconstruction means the symbol was saved.
And this is the trade-off. This is the core of the decision that Truman and his administration made. He sacrificed the authenticity of the material for the survival of the symbol.
That is a profound idea. The facade, the image, was more important than the substance.
Because the substance was failing. The old house couldn't support the weight of the modern presidency. It was literally falling down. There are famous stories of one of the first daughter's piano legs punching straight through the floor of her room into the room below.
So the great gutting was an act of survival.
It was. It was a recognition that for the institution to survive, the physical structure had to evolve. It had to become harder, stronger, industrial.
It had to become steel.
It mirrors the country itself, doesn't it? The United States in 1948 was hardening. We were building the national security state, the CIA, the Department of Defense. These were all created in the Truman era.
So he was building the deep state infrastructure at the exact same time he was building the physical infrastructure of the presidency.
Form follows function. The American government was becoming a steel-framed industrial superpower, so the president's house had to become a steel-framed industrial fortress.
That is a fascinating layer of analysis. The architecture matches the administration. It's a physical manifestation of the Truman Doctrine.
But it leaves us with this unseen reality. And this is the so what of the deep dive. This is why this matters to you, listening right now.
Why does it matter?
Because without the specific source text, and without the specific search keywords, you'd have no idea this happened.
The visual shock is entirely historical. If I go to Washington, D.C. tomorrow and stand on Pennsylvania Avenue, I'm not going to see a bulldozer.
You're not. You won't see a plaque that says, "Warning, this is a 1948 replica of the original interior." The history has been smoothed over. The plaster covers the steel. The hollowed halls have been filled back in with new halls.
So the text is inviting us to see the invisible. It's asking us to overlay that black and white image of the wreckage onto the full color image of the pristine building we see today.
It creates a ghost image in your mind. Once you know about the great gutting, you can't unknow it. You look at the building and you know it's a shell. You know it's a mask.
It makes the building feel more complex. It's not just a static monument anymore. It's a survivor. It's a story of destruction and rebirth.
It brings the building to life in a funny way. It's not just a rock, it's a living thing that had radical life-saving surgery.
Radical surgery is right.
Life-saving surgery, it would have collapsed otherwise.
We said this was going to be a marathon, and I feel like we have truly run the distance on this one idea. We have looked at every brick, every beam, and every bulldozer track.
We didn't skim, we dug.
We went all the way to the bottom of the new basement.
And we found a bulldozer there waiting for us.
We certainly did. But before we sign off, we have a job for you, the listener. This deep dive isn't over just because we stopped talking.
No, the source material gave us those keywords for a reason. It's homework.
Don't just take our word for the visual shock. You need to experience it for yourself. Your brain needs to see the glitch in the matrix.
Go to your search bar right now if you can. Type in those words, White House gutted bulldozers.
Look for the photos. Look for the image of the dump truck parked inside what should be the grand foyer. Look for the daylight streaming through the roof where the crystal chandelier should be.
Look at the raw steel beams rising up inside the elegant stone walls. It looks like a skyscraper under construction, but it's trapped inside a mansion from another century.
It will absolutely change the way you see the news tonight. When you see the president walking down that hall, you won't just see the carpet and the paint.
You'll know what's behind the plaster. You'll see the steel. You'll hear the ghost of the bulldozer engine.
And we will leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. We have established that the White House, the most scrutinized, famous, documented building in America, was completely hollowed out and replaced in 1948, and most of us barely remember it.
It was an event of massive scale that has largely faded from the collective memory. It's been paved over.
So ask yourself this: if the White House is just a shell, what else is?
What other institutions, what other organizations, what other eternal things in our society look like they have stood for centuries, but have actually been gutted and replaced from the inside out?
Are we looking at continuity, or are we just looking at a really, really good reconstruction?
It makes you question the solidity of everything you see.
And that is exactly where we want to leave you, questioning the solidity. Thanks for running this marathon with us.
Keep digging.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.